Are you tired of watching autoplay make the worst decisions possible? Want a foolproof build that will save significant time for your daily farming? Well, today I'm going to share why Maneuvering Fire is the best for daily farming, the characters you want to focus on, and what to prioritize during your run so you can make this build. And yes, this even works in single target farming stages. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Cosmic, and today it's finally time to talk about Maneuvering Fire. Yes, this build has been going around everywhere. If you've been on Reddit, Twitter, pretty much anywhere and everywhere has been trying to cover this build, but I wanted to take this one step further, not just talk about, well, what brings it all together in case this is the first time that you've seen it or heard about it, but also why it works on some characters and why it doesn't, and then also the best way to try and farm it. And you'll realize why this can really be kind of aggravating to build when you might have a different character who excels at it a little bit more. So if you like guides like this, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as it does help out a ton, but otherwise let's just dive straight into the video. So yes, we are talking about Maneuvering Fire, and the most important thing to note here is that it does have initiation, which means it starts at the top of the draw pile. Now, this is just a 200% damage AoE, and it's really important to note that if you feel like you need a little bit more damage, this all gets buffed by this middle node that honestly a lot of us are otherwise skipping because neutrals do feel a little bit more limited in how much we're using them, at least in the current meta. So this does take a little bit more investment than what you might have on your characters already. But even with that very short example that I showed in my single target farm and going all the way up to D10, if I had the rest of this build put together and if I had my characters upgraded, you can see even Veronica doesn't have this maxed out. I don't have the best of stats on her at the time of what memory fragments I'm using. I was just testing this to get a little bit more, right? There's more optimization that I could do here is what I'm really trying to say. But for the build itself, yes, you are going to be looking at 5 Maneuvering Fires. And if you really want to build this out perfectly, let's say you want to do 3 full stages of having the Maneuvering Fire, right? Ideally, you're going to want 5 Maneuvering Fires per character. Now, one of the challenges that we'll note right away is that you'll notice something is missing here from Veronica's builds, right? If we go back to cards, one of the challenges that you'll face is that you have to remove the other initiation cards, and I'm going to have Hugo as the other example. So you do need to plan your build around this. So naturally, some characters are going to be a little bit better at building towards this, but generally speaking, you're going to need about 150 points, and I'll cover that more a little bit later. But let's get into the actual, well, that's only dealing effectively 1000% damage for that turn, not counting crits and other factors, what have you, right? What really works at bringing it all together? So for your attack, there's actually a few different options here. I just got admittedly really lucky with Foggy Crystal Ball, which drops off the final boss, but I really do like RFS, or even like a Crystal Sword will work here. As you'll find out with the medium investment that I'm going to call it right now, you are doing more than enough damage to clear the D6 or difficulty 6 stages. Now, in the D10 memory fragment that I was trying to test, I didn't have a third character built out, but if I had another copy of Moon of Destruction and another character that had the all-in Maneuvering Fire build, I could have easily cleared that stage as well. Now, it would have taken 3 turns, the same amount of turns it would take if you're doing a normal 3-wave 60 stamina clear, so it still translates in that way. But what's really important to note here is that if you are doing the just 1 wave at a time and retry, like we've seen so many times before, where you just go in, blow everything up, then go click on the retry button right away, technically, the Moon of Destruction, what it really enables here is that all of it will trigger at the start of the battle, and then generally, you will only have to play a single Maneuvering Fire to get the clear. So bringing this back to when we think about dailies and about spending 120 stamina, killing 12 enemies, and that, right, you can loop that very, very fast. It is a near instant kill because you're only using the 1 card. Now, if you were to spam this out manually, of course, it would chain the attacks together, so it would save even more time. But for a purely what is the fastest way of setting this up, yes, you are going to want Moon of Destruction to play 1 less card. Now, is this mandatory? No, at least not for the sake of the difficulty 6 stages. It is more of a nice to have, but if you want to extend this build into the difficulty 10 and making sure that you're doing as much as possible, then you will want to try to get triple Moon of Destruction on those 1-wave fights, because it is just a extra significant source of damage when you factor in 3 characters have it. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the epiphanies, because unfortunately, as you might have saw up front, I got possibly the worst one for Veronica, and I didn't really think about it until after the fact. I got a little bit lucky, I would say, in that Veronica got very lucky very quickly of making that build. So I didn't really realize this until I was working on Hugo, is that you actually want to get Apply Mark II to all enemies as the choice epiphany. Drawing the extra cards or getting the AP really don't matter, and those seem to be the the epiphanies I always get. So that does bother me a little bit. But with the Mark II, you're actually just getting free damage on top of it. So this is very important for those more bossing stages where, let's say you do get the mutant sample, you do have enough points to work with, right? I could have taken one more neutral with Hugo here. If you have the mutant sample, if you have the right amount of removals, right, you can get very lucky of just keeping that extra epiphany and just getting even more resources with the mark and dealing as much damage as possible. Now, the other thing that you'll note here is, again, for Hugo, when we think about the hunting instincts and needing to get rid of this, now what's nice about this version instead is that you technically want to get the epiphany and choose literally any other option because you don't want this to appear in your starting hand because it will throw off what you are trying to do. So do keep in mind, I want to stress that up front, is that you really need to focus on making sure whoever you're using does not have other cards with initiation, or you are going to potentially mess this up. Now, again, for the sake of the save data itself, 4 was actually just fine for clearing another wave with Hugo. I tested this on like a wave 2. So that was fine. Now, it did use the one extra random card that was in my hand because the AI is going to do whatever the AI wants to do at that point, but it did do enough damage with Hugo, which again is not insanely upgraded here, right? It has 0 of the neutral upgrades other than the one that I got to go past it. I don't have a lot of crit chance or crit damage. And of course, that's all stuff that's going to help build up your build, right? So once you invest more and get better gear and all that stuff, you could naturally do even better in higher difficulty stages very quickly. Now, that does bring me to the second part of this video that I want to talk about, and just getting into the unique card discussion. So while it might be a downside at first, one thing to note is that unique cards are super important. And this is now just like more general farming tips that's really important to know. Unique cards are a great way to make sure that other stuff doesn't get copied that you don't want to get copied, right? With Veronica and having her various like the pendant upgrades and the ballistas, because they're unique and you can't copy them, when you're doing these runs and removing cards from the other combatants that you don't want to target, or just getting unique upgrades, you're able to target that maneuvering fire to have an increased likelihood. So not only is this important for farming maneuvering fire and trying to copy and trying to max out the copies that you have in the deck for the amount of points you can have, but this is also just a good to know for future reference. So if I want to go all in on, say, a Rin build, what this entire graph boils down to, and what I wanted to highlight, is that to make the best Rin possible and have the best opportunity to copy her cards, what you're going to want to do is have Veronica in your team because she has the most amount of uniques and great cards to remove anyways. And then beyond that, because you're doing a chaos run, spoiler, you're going to want Mika, but she also has a default unique card in her starting deck so that when you get it, removes one of the cards you could potentially copy from. So I am once again trying to stress that this is not a, oh my god, please use Veronica on your selector, but she's very, very good at what she wants to be doing for helping your other combatants get better save data. When she has 3 uniques herself, and spoiler, you are always going to end up removing her basic attacks as you lean into the ballista package, that just helps you further slim down the deck so you always hit the cards that you want to copy. Beyond that, of course, she just has insane draw capability with the 0 cost repose that you can eventually get, as well as, if you've been seeing other builds with her, you know, getting 2k, 3k, sometimes 4k critting ballistas does more than enough than you could ever ask for as being just a good sub DPS. So when we look at, again, all the other pieces and we think about who am I trying to build this with, and I put build targets here just to represent the hunters and the rangers, well, Veronica also becomes the best character to try to make this build on. So if you only have Veronica, and if you just want to do the 1 turn wave and, you know, retry fresh that and just continue on to the next run, Veronica is all you need. You put 5 maneuvering fires on her, you'll have the best chance of running through the chaos and finding 5 of them and then copying them. Whereas if you're trying to do Barrel or if you're trying to do Lucas, right, you're going to have more misses in your deck, making it a little bit harder to pull it all together. So one other thing to note here is that everything that has like an asterisk on it, like the Maribel here, it's one of their upgrades that has a chance at becoming a unique card. So while that is much more of a random chance, I felt like I still had to call this out just to give as many options as possible and let players and like yourself know, well, what are the odds here? And like, how much does it really matter? And honestly, when we think about the big picture here, Veronica's the best by a pretty significant margin. You know, Maylin's up there, and then the rest are about equal. Now, that said, if you're running Maylin in your Chaos team, you're probably trying to finish a build with her, or you're already hyper invested in her, so it doesn't really matter what she gets, and that could be great for running through chaos and just carrying through your other hunters or rangers. But you will notice on the left hand side that it does get a little bit awkward of trying to piece all of that together. So my best recommendation, as I have here right at the bottom, right, is that if you are a purely free-to-play player, the good news is that you can rely on Mika and Ray, and you have a good amount of upgrades in your deck, assuming you get the right pieces, but that is going to be your best pairing for farming not only this build, but again, I want to be very clear, this is now transitioning into just a good save data style of video, but if you're trying to copy cards, that will be your best free-to-play team. Of course, if you have her, Veronica is automatically going to be a staple and something that you absolutely should consider as this last option, with X just being whatever character you are working on. And so the third and final piece I want to talk about is just the farm priority. And this is something that I have gotten a lot of questions on when it comes to just as I've been streaming and where I prioritize what I'm looking for. And I really want to stress that there's ultimately 2 different paths you're taking here, right? You're either looking for neutral cards. So again, this is not just maneuvering fire, but just thinking about other neutral cards in the future that might be good. Or you're doing what I'm just going to call a normal farm and trying to min-max your save data. Maybe you're trying to get like the 5x copy of the zero cost repose in your deck. That's kind of the other way that I would focus. And so I want to add the other disclaimer. This is all talking about Lab 0 at the time of recording. So what I have here in the middle, as you'll notice, is just a tier 12 because that will give you 150 points, and this is on difficulty 8. First and foremost, there is no reason at all to go above difficulty 8. It is really just flexing if you want to do 9, 10, and 11. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I've been so busy just trying to farm build, I have not gone back to even bother attempting difficulty 9 because you don't really get anything from it. So again, please, if you get to difficulty 8 and you can comfortably clear that, just farm that. If you can do difficulty 7 and maybe you high roll enough times to get the right modifiers to then also get tier 12 to appear, which then on nightmare mode it becomes the 150 or tier 13 that we're looking for, that's fine too, right? Like if you have the extra resources to do the reobserve and just loop it for the right modifiers, feel free to do it on difficulty 7 as well. But let me explain these 2 different paths that we have. So as you're trying to build maneuvering fire, as is the example for this video, I cannot stress it enough that shops become your best friends. If you go into a chaos and you do not have a single shop before the first boss, because there's always a shop right before the boss, quit. Get out right away. It's not worth it, I promise you. And that's just something that's been a little bit challenging as I've been going through this process myself. But if you don't see at least one extra shop in your first floor, just quit out. Now, the thing I want to mention is that you need to save your credits. When you're doing a normal farm build, it's really not important. You're just getting so many credits, you don't really know what to do with them. You're not having to spend a lot of extra resources trying to refresh, so you naturally get enough credits just by going and fighting characters, right? But with this, I have found that I do need to target very specifically the resources on the rare nodes, or event nodes, I should say, that just say, hey, give me credits. I don't care what the other modes are on this for this event. I just want credits. So do keep in mind that you will be refreshing. And a good thing to note here is that the maneuvering fire without any discounts costs 60 credits, so just assume at any one point in time you will want 150 credits because you have ideally 3 refreshes. So in the worst case scenario, to find a maneuvering fire that, again, assuming your zero system's upgraded so you get the 5 refreshes for free, you will need 90 credits for refreshing and then 60 to buy the maneuvering fire. Beyond that, my second priority is always the elites, because Moon of Destruction, again, while I mentioned up front, it is a nice to have. I am personally trying to min-max this build as much as possible, so Moon of Destruction is best in slot. And look, you do not want to pay 212 for this at any point, unless it's the last two shops, which I had here on the normal side as well, because that's what I'm spending my credits. Unless it's the last two shops in particular, I am not buying that Moon of Destruction. Now, maybe if I've gotten super lucky early on, I already have 3 Maneuvering Fires, and I see a discounted Moon of Destruction, I might buy it if I found enough events to give me extra credits. Now, again, most situations, I'm not buying it. You will have to know your run and how it's going if you can afford to buy it or not. But the elites do have a chance to drop this, or again, most importantly, they will drop any equipment which you do want to extract for the credits, just to give you a little bit more income for re-rolling. So do keep in mind, this is where it really becomes a metagame of understanding how much you can push in chaos without certain equipment to always get an increase in extra cash you can use in those shops. So do keep that in mind. Sometimes you do just want to extract the gear. I know it can be tempting to just throw it on a character and enjoy the buffs, but if you don't need the item, just extract it. Now, rare events, or I should just call them rare events, but I'm hoping to get rare events right. I do want to stress that, you know, in the second half, you will swap these two. I do mention this on the normal side as well, but I do put a higher priority on the events in interior. In both cases of farming, you're wanting to find these events because when you're trying to look for neutral cards, there is an event called Memory Archive, which allows you to have 3 different roles and help you find rare to legendary cards in every single one of them. I think the lowest one is normal to rare, but it finds you a rare card in all instances. So when we are trying to find Maneuvering Fire and we need to find 5 copies, Memory Archive becomes the single best event that we could hope for, just because it gives us the most chances to find what we need. And then last but not least is, of course, going to be just the battles at the very, very end, because we don't need epiphanies. In fact, like, if depending on if we got mutant sample or not, or depending if we got other conversion events to save on our cost, most of the time, what you want to do for this build is get 5 Maneuvering Fires and hope that only 1 or 2 of them upgrade in your epiphanies, because otherwise it's going to be too many points. So there's actually a little bit of a science here in trying to dodge epiphanies, where in normal farming modes you always want to find them. So do keep that in mind. So this is where you'll have to get a little bit more comfortable of just knowing how many events am I doing versus how many battles I've done, because especially in the second half, you are just saying, hey, I want to jam every event I possibly can to get the best items, and also make sure that I don't go over on save data. Once you find that 5th Maneuvering Fire, you will be sweating just to make sure you don't break your save data. So like, that's the one caveat I'll say. Like, if you want to go higher, sure, you can to like tier 15, just have that little bit of extra cushion, but largely speaking, in my experience, it's not worth it. And then for normal farming, I do want to stress here, right, the other side of this is battles, 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 battles. You want to get all your epiphanies. You want to try to find your stuff early, just to try and see if it's going to be a good run for that character, if you found the right epiphanies. And then in the second half, or the interior, then you can swap it for the events, because then you're trying to look for the copy. The one that I want to give a shout out here too is Heart of the Ore Vein 2, which is a rare one, but it is also the only way in the game currently that you can copy these forbidden cards. And well, if you can get 2 Ecstasy of Violence on a character and just have it be your ultimate damage nuke, spoiler, you win the game. Now, I think overall, like Eternal Hunger, the one that just draws and filters and gives you AP, that's the one that I'm looking forward to abusing the most. So I'm trying to work on a Nia save data. So we'll see what that looks like once I have more time to build it. But do keep that in mind, is that there are some very good events in interior. And then last, as I've noticed in the last 2 shops, I'm always spending the rest of my credits trying to figure out what I need in my build, or in the case, again, bringing it back to Maneuvering Fire, if I find something that says, hey, I need to get 1 more Maneuvering Fire, and that's going to be the perfect build, then I'm going all in on those last 2 shops, and that's where I can spend it. Otherwise, you might just be grabbing like a legendary equipment to round out a character to give you a little bit more buffer going into the boss, right? It's not as important if you're doing normal save data, unless you high roll something at the very end, or decide, oh, I want 1 more neutral, like a Belligerence, just randomly. So That's all for today's video. Again, I want to give a little bit more complete breakdown on how to approach this because it not only helps with your daily farms, but I think this is just good general advice for if you're farming more neutral cards in Chaos Zero Nightmare, that this could be helpful information in the future as well. Of course, we'll have to see what new seasonal chaos we get and how much that changes things, but let me know what your favorite tip was down in the comments below. Until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.